Hi there, my name is Wills, and today I'd like to share with you how I speed paint Kraken Termagants in the High Fleet Kraken color scheme. I am not any kind of expert miniature painter, let me say that first. I paint mostly for speed and an interest of putting game pieces on the table. That said, I watch many YouTube model painting channels, and my feeling is that any given model has a basically unlimited number of ways to paint them, and any given tutorial, even the most inexpert of them, has the potential to be useful to someone. So with that said, first we'll start with a primer. Depending on where the primer color lands on the wider color scheme, it might be feasible to leave some of it showing, but in the event you're going to be applying further paint over the entire model, you really don't need full perfect coverage. A spotty light coat can be just fine. You're just giving the model something for the following paint to bite into. I knew that I was going to be dry brushing the skin, but while I knew that Pro Acryl Ivory was going to be the last highlight through dry brushing, I wasn't sure whether I wanted warm dark gray or golden yellow to be my midtone. So I painted two test models with one of each, intending to pick out which I liked better later. After the skin was dry brushed, I moved on to the first stage of the carapace. Using Pro Acryl Burnt Red to lay down an initial layer on the plates on the back and thighs of the Termagant, as well as its weapon. For the weapon tubing and what I'm assuming is supposed to be ammo, I used Jade to pick them out. You could use literally any kind of contrasting color here that you prefer, you just want these elements to be distinct from the weapon, which I decided to paint black. But you should totally feel free to experiment with color selection here. Just be sure that these elements have stark contrast to the weapon so as to add visual interest. Next, I painted coal black over the weapon, hooves, and talons, and it occurred to me pretty much immediately that this stage probably should have gone on before the Jade. I don't know what I was thinking, but here as you watch, it's quite obvious in retrospect. It's hard to work around the Jade. Without it, you would just need to avoid the skin on the fingers, which will still remain white. But here you're working around a bunch of other openings as well. I swapped these two steps in the order when painting following models in the squad, and it was, of course, much easier. If you wanted, you could stop here. The main colors are on the model. The model would be considered battle-ready under the current 40k rules, and there is nothing stopping you from adding further details at a later date if your objective is to get these models playable ASAP. Getting to this point takes all of about 12 minutes a model, but if you're prepared to commit another 13, you can really take this piece to a much more polished state. If you want to do so, the first step is to work on the carapace again, which is the most prominent feature of the model. Using heavily thinned black paint, I put a thin black line behind every single separation in the I say thin, but you can see some of them are quite thick. Don't worry so much about it. Just put these thin lines behind every single separation in the carapace that the model has. Then I used Pro Acryl Bold Pyrite Red to put streaks on the carapace, starting in the dark and black regions and pulling to the back of each plate using a detail brush. This takes a few minutes, but I promise you that after 3 or 4 models you will dramatically pick up the pace. Then I took Guilliman Flesh Contrast paint and applied it to the skin where it meets the plates, on the shoulders, the tail, around the thighs, and the back of the head. I followed that up by applying small brown dots to the areas I just shaded with Guilliman Flesh to create a brown mottled marking pattern, which is apparently now just a standard part of the High Fleet Kraken scheme. I put a very light dry brush of ivory over the black elements, including the claws, hooves, and weapon, but I need to make clear that you need to be extremely sparing at this step. Test your dry brush against the edge of the base first and make sure it leaves very little paint behind, especially before you dry brush the weapon. The angles you're trying to pick up on the weapon are quite tiny, and it's easy to flood the details rather than highlight them if you have too much paint on your brush. You want your dry brush to be leaving minuscule amounts of paint on the base before you move to it. I painted the eye on the gun yellow, and initially I tried painting the actual Termagants' eyes yellow as well, but I quickly realized that yellow just doesn't stand up too well against their skin, and decided to instead paint them black for a insectoid vibe, which is coincidentally much easier to achieve. I went with a simple basing for this model. AK Interactive Dark Earth texture paint, lightly dry brushed with Pro Acryl Golden Brown, and then grass flocking was applied with white Elmer's glue. Then coal black was applied to the rim, and the result is as follows. I hope you get something out of this tutorial. I'm going to be painting 2 Tyranid halves of the Leviathan box set this month, focusing on the remaining models. I'm really looking forward to getting the Screamer Killers done in particular, even though I hear they're not great at their points cost right now, but I'm resolved to get most of the small stuff painted first, so Barb Gaunts and Neurogaunts are likely up next. Thanks for watching my first tutorial video. I'll see you if I see you.